So that's a great segue to an incredibly challenging thing that you accomplished with Apollo 13.
Oh, that one.
And so how does one shoot weightlessness or zero gravity?
Well, that was one of the challenges we had. When I met with Ron, um, he said, "Well, what I want to do is make sure the audience sees this as a real event. It's not a space movie or science fiction." Over the years, the audience had seen the Apollo 11 mission, but guys on landing on the moon, and we've seen broadcasts back from inside the capsule. We've seen what it looks like, and how it was lit, that kind of thing. So he wanted to do something that was as little artificial science fiction as possible, because we as the audience had seen these events, and there was a frame of reference. So I looked at footage, and there were certain things, like as the capsule was in space, it would do a very slow roll, what they called the barbecue roll.
A technical term, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that came from, but and that was to keep the skin and the thing consistently heated, because the sun was hot, the space was cold. So as I looked at it, I realized that as it rolled, sunlight would come through a window, and as it rolled, the sunlight would appear to move on the inside, and then it would go dark. And then the lighting was mostly from these small fixtures inside. And Ron said he didn't want to feel or have the audience feel that they were outside the capsule. We didn't want to take away, the fourth wall and do a big wide shot, because you can sense when the camera is, not where it should be. I had them rig the capsules. We actually had 2 command and 2 lunar modules, and had them build a framework around it of steel to hold it together, and then little sections that would remove. But we made a rule that the lens was never outside the wall, because there are certain artifacts, even the audience, I think, recognizes wide lens distortion and things, and it subconsciously reacts. So, and then the framework was so that we could hang the thing upside down, or in any way. We had big chain motors. We could create, any position we wanted. Then I had him build this rig so that the camera itself was weightless. It was a nylon, rig, and a rope or cable that went up to the permanence on the stages, very high, over and down to a counterweight. The camera could be moved just with your fingertips, and moved around. So the camera operator had the opportunity to make the camera weightless or position it anywhere. We didn't have to worry about rigging dollies with arms and all kinds of stuff. So moving sunlight, weightless camera, there were, half a dozen different things. And so the moving sunlight, I had them put a rock and roll light, the kind that, can be computer controlled or manually, on the end of a crane arm. And the grip would move the arm past the window, but the electrician would always keep the light aimed inside the window. So it didn't just go past, it was always shining in as if the sun was out there. So there were all of these little techniques that we used. The weightless, though, there was the issue. We shot tests, guys on wires in front of blue screens, guys on special rigs in front of blue screens, camera upside down, a guy hanging on a blue screen, and with the camera upside down, the wires came out from the bottom. But there was always something that said gravity, the way a coat hung or his hair or whatever. We tried all kinds of stuff. One of the big things was getting through the tunnel between the two capsules. How to accomplish that? Would we cut a slot in the top and hang a guy on a wire, or put a rig underneath? And then one day, Ron and Tom Hanks and Gary Sinise, all of the principal actors, were invited down to Houston to go through space camp, but the adult version. And it was the training they did for like government officials and prime contractor guys and all of that stuff. And they went through the process of learning, you know, what is the trajectory of the thing and what does it feel like to, and they had to get in this device, a fuselage, you might say, a small cart, slide down this slide towards the swimming pool, and when it splashed, it would flip over, and they had to get out and come up. Pretty courageous stuff. And that was to prepare them for the ride on the KC-135. KC-135 was an old 707 aircraft that they had rebuilt, strengthening the wings, bigger engines. They took out all the seats except for a few, padded the interior and the floor, and you would go inside the aircraft, and it would climb over the Gulf of Mexico to 36,000 feet, and then it would go over the top of this parabola and plunge to Earth. The pilot had to keep the aircraft centered around you, and when you were there, you were weightless because you were falling to Earth, but of course there's no wind and stuff. So as you're plummeting to Earth, you become weightless. And there's a very sophisticated instrumentation they have to use. The pilot has taped on the console, he has a glass jar with a ball bearing in it. And when that ball bearing is centered in the thing, he knows he's flying okay. So, and so Ron comes back from space camp, and he says, come here, look at this. And we watched this video that they shot. And there are the guys, the actors, you know, I called them actor-nauts at that point, sitting on the floor of the aircraft, and then they levitate, and then they roll around, then they push each other, and they go up and down. They're weightless. Ron said, that's the technique. He said, we'll get permission to put our set inside the KC-135, the Vomit Comet, it was called, and we'll shoot the weightless stuff. We'll storyboard it, just the essential weightless shots. And I said, sounds great. He said, okay, I'm going to call. So he called NASA. He said, here's what we want to do. We want to shoot inside this thing, and we'll put the set in there, and the actors, and they said, wait. Well, you want to what? Well, we figure we'll shoot, and said, no. You get one ride on it, but nobody shoots in there. Why would they do that? But also, you know, there's some certain hazards. Suppose we killed Tom Hanks. Oh, well, Tom will sign a waiver. Don't worry about it. No. Sorry. Thanks for calling. Click. And then Ron says, now what am I going to do? And he says, well, you know, I'll have to go up to some more authority. So he calls the California State Senator. And the guy says, hello. So Ron Howard, we're doing this great American space epic thing, heroic adventure. You know, the first man on the, oh, sounds pretty good. Yeah, let me call NASA. So he, you know, said, I'll call you tomorrow. Calls back and says, okay, they said, suppose we kill Tom Hanks. You can't do it. So Ron says, "Oh no, we've got to do this." So he says, "I know. I'll call somebody with even more authority than anybody else." So he calls Steven Spielberg. Steven, Ron here. I'm doing this epic movie, great heroic, so forth. And Steven says, "Well, that sounds really interesting. You know what? I have somebody I can call." So he calls Bill Clinton. Says, "Here's the deal. Ron Howard, great American space heroic thing, blah, blah." And Bill says, "Well, let me see what I can do." The next day, NASA calls and said, "We've been thinking about this." So that was the way they got to do it. I didn't get to go on the ride because I had not crashed into the swimming pool with the thing upside.
Sure, you got to do the swimming pool thing first.
Yeah, absolutely. They have rules there at NASA,
Okay, good evening, America. And
The
welcome aboard
handheld
Apollo
camera,
13.
because that was the way people
I'm
were
Jim
used
Lovell,
to seeing
and we're
inside the
broadcasting
capsule.
to you tonight from an altitude
This is a
of
reconstruction of mission control over at Universal.
away from
It was so accurate that we had about 8 technical advisors showing us how to do this stuff. And they walked in and said, "Wow, this is like just going back in time."
Okay, one of the first things we'd like to do is
provide you with the appropriate background music.
So now some of this we
hit it
did
there, Fredo.
just on the stage.
hello, world.
And there's a weightless shot to establish the reality of it.
That was supposed to be the theme to 2001 in honor of our command module Odyssey.
But there seems to have been a last-minute change in the program.
So
When I go up there on 19, I'm going to take
They
my
shot,
entire collection of Johnny Cash along.
6 days, 23 seconds per parabola. You got 23 seconds of weightless.
All the networks stopped us. One of them said
And,
we're going to the moon, about as exciting as taking
and
a
then
trip
would
to Pittsburgh.
pull out and climb again and repeat it.
son's
That's Ron
supposed to
Howard's
be
mother,
on.
by the way. She
He's
appears
in
in
outer space.
all of his movies.
I've been accused of receiving
This is all the channels we get, Mrs. Lovell.
Some more weightless. So it was moments like this that sold the premise and made you believe you were actually seeing it.
Do they know they're not on the air?
We'll tell them when they get back.
So the shots were carefully selected.
Oh, well, if anyone from the IRS is watching,
The other times we would have the guys on teeter-totters. They would sit on a little bicycle seat, and the teeter-totter would put them up through the. Here's one of the.
Follow me. Now,
one of
when
the
we
great
get
ones,
ready
the,
to land on the moon, Fred Hayes and I
that sold
will float
you
through
on
this
the
access
weightless aspect.
tunnel into the lunar module, leaving
Econ, that stir's going to be on both H2 and both O2 tanks. Is that correct?
spacecraft will remain connected. Well, folks, as you can probably tell, the Aquarius isn't much bigger than a couple of telephone booths. Okay, we're about to close out the Aquarius and
moving to
return to
sunlight.
the Odyssey. Our next broadcast will be from Frau Mora on the surface of the moon.
So, this is the crew of the Apollo 13, wishing everyone back on Earth a pleasant evening.
Now, of course, with films like Gravity, so much of this is done with wires
You might hear a few minutes of it on the
and
news.
wire removal and all of the tricks of the computer age. Thank you.
And somehow Tom Hanks survived.
We didn't kill him.
So we have fulfilled our time. So I would love to end on a moment of wisdom in terms of, after creating all of this incredible work and committing so much to the art of visual storytelling. For those in the audience who are working with their cameras, who are learning how to tell story that's not necessarily based on script, but based on a sequence of images, is there one thing or one bit of advice that you would leave us with? No pressure.
All right. Well, you know, it's like I've been saying, so much of the way we see the world is visual. So much of the way we understand the stories that are visually told to us with movies and video and TV now, that I think I go back to the idea that watch movies, and I tell, you know, film students and all, find a good movie, find one of your favorites, whatever, and watch it, but turn off the sound. Do the visuals tell you the story? Do you know what the characters are going through? Do you understand what they're feeling and so forth? And understand how that visual storytelling is effective. And then steal from the best, you know? Use all of that as inspiration. And think back, what shot have I seen or what sequence have I seen that would fit this particular moment, not this whole movie, but this particular moment in the scene? And how can I keep the audience involved, explain to them what it is, make them feel like they are watching reality. And it's, you know, like I say, it's tempting to say, well, I'm going to do something really radical, something nobody's done. Well, does it serve the purpose? Or are you doing it because you think it would be really cool? For whom are you making the movie? An audience or yourself? So I say, you know, again, understand the visual storytelling and then, you know, use it.
Thank you so much for being here, Dean, and thank you all for being here tonight.